Okay, did you know there's a silent war being waged against real estate? And the realtors are on the front line. If you want to know more, stay tuned.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. Today, we're going to be talking about the silent war against real estate. And I'm talking specifically about dangerous legislation. We're going to dive into some of that and how it affects real estate and you as a property owner or a potential buyer. But before I get to that, I need to introduce this fabulous team, the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, hand me the Rockberry, Melissa, let's go, Glasgow, Aspen, the Ninja, Groen, and Shannon, the boss, Martin Martinez. My name is Ben Lyons, the host of The Den, and this is going to be an interesting topic. Now, Paul, I know you have served on the state level for RPAC, which is the Realtor Political Action Committee. I've served there myself for many years, and we are on the front lines of some of this legislation. So talk to us a little bit about how important legislation is in real estate, some of the dangers that, I mean, it's kind of like one of those things where, you don't know you're being shot at until the bullet's behind you, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, I just missed that. In real estate, oftentimes we're like, wow, we're glad that didn't pass.
Right.
Because that could really mess us up. Paul, talk to us because you're in the vein today with a lot of legislation that's happening. Now, you all are heading down here in a few weeks, correct? So fill us in on kind of where you're at and some of your thoughts there.
All right. Well, this is a topic that I like.
It's better than what? Power?
Than water rights.
Okay.
I know a little bit more than this. I'm a part of a couple of committees, the RPAC Trustee Committee, where we collect money from all of our members and we push it towards legislators who have property rights, homeownership rights. That's one of their guiding ideals, that they will not vote against those things. On a legislative committee, what we do is we go over all the bills that come out. We have a legislative session coming up. It starts next week in Santa Fe. And we go over all the bills that are being introduced. This one's a short session, so it's not going to be as many. But we go over all the bills that have anything to do with homeownership, private property rights, economic development, taxes. So some of the things that we see every year are transfer tax. We see water rights come up quite a bit.
Yep.
So I know a little bit, but I'm not an expert. One of the other things we see is the Owner-Resident Relation Act, which goes over tenants' rights versus landlord rights. That's a big one. Usually taxes. One of the things that we see is Santa Fe usually tries to pass some of these laws, and they're like the testing grounds. And then once they get it passed in Santa Fe, then all of a sudden they try to take it statewide.
And the door creaks open.
And once those doors open up, they're really hard to shut. One of the big fights that we had last year was there were bills out there that were trying to get rid of R1. And if you don't know what R1 is, that's single family resident zoning.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So they wanted to make everything multifamily. So any new construction would have to be more than one family. What they were thinking is anything that was already a single family resident had to allow an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. And the idea there was so you could age in place. Like you could grow up in a house. When your kids all leave, they could own that house and you go to that ADU and live there. Some of the problems with that, though, is once they try to sell that, if they ever need to, it's hard to get lending on homes with ADUs. The financing is different, the infrastructure, so resources.
So you're saying that we pass bills and we don't have the infrastructure there to take care of it?
Imagine that?
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, we pass it to read what's in it. So, I mean, those are the things that we fight. And what we do as at the legislative committee is we come up with suggestions on these bills. We hand them to our lobbyists, and then our lobbyists go to the floor of the House, and they're the ones fighting the good fight for us.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I thank you for what you do there on the state level. Like I said, I've been on that committee, and I've rolled my sleeves up there, and so I understand how important that is for our state. And I think it's important for our viewers to understand, and through the talking points here, is that there is continuous legislation that are hitting the desks, and some of these are 50-page bills, 100-page, 200-page bills, and in the back of this bill that they're talking about funding a municipality or something to that effect, they build in they just kind of sneak in some stuff of that would really harm real estate. And so it's really important that the realtors are on the front line, and we have entire committees and money and lobbyists, as you indicated, dedicated to reading through these bills, because, the whole pass it now, we'll figure it out later, that just does not fly, because now all of a sudden you have a big issue. And especially with property rights. See, people see real estate and they go, "Oh, we're kind of low on money in our state. Where do we go to find that?" Oh, real estate, right? The easy target. And so it's constantly, that's why I call this the silent war. There's a constant barrage of legislation that comes after your rights as a property owner, and that could marginalize your ability to own land or property. And if you take that away from people, then what do you have?
My whole platform is really about participation. We can get our real estate license and become a member of NAR, National Association of Realtors, and a member of our local board, put a sign up in the yard and sell houses. Yeah. Right? We need to all get involved in these things like legislative, RPAC, know what's going on in our own city council and everything else. We have to be the pillars of our communities to know these things. It's more than just putting a sign outside. You need to know these other things that are going on to protect your clients and yourself as a homeowner, as a property owner, as a business owner. Yeah. Get out there and educate yourself. I love to encourage fellow realtors to go to the meetings. We're going to go to Santa Fe, like we already talked about. And this will be my third year. I think my third year going. And every year I learn more about what it means to be in this giant cog of real estate. So I think it's very important to know what's going on. And it might not affect us in San Juan County. It might be something like the transfer tax. Properties over $1 million. Yeah. That's going to affect more people in the pond in Santa Fe, sure, than it is in San Juan County. Yeah. But it's still important. But the door creaks open, because how long is it before they go, we're not getting as much money from the $1 million.
We need to do $500,000.
Yeah, we need to get the $500,000, right?
Where does it stop?
And thank you for the participation component. And for the viewers that don't know, I'm talking to the SJCBR, it's the San Juan County Board of Realtor President, Melissa Glasgow. It's your year this year, and your theme is participation, which is fantastic. I love that. We have an immediate past president, Paul Berry, who did a wonderful job. His whole goal was to pick up the association and leave it better than what he found it. And he did that, accomplished that. And then we have President-elect, the Ninja, Aspen. So she's coming up, and thank you for all your service as well. Considering the presidents in the past, you two have had pretty short terms in the industry to be at a level that you're at, which is fantastic. Yeah. So thank you for your service there. We have former board member here and former board member, president here. So we've all served in capacities over the years.
We all put our money where our mouth.
Yep. Yes. And I think that is really important. And if you're a realtor watching this, get involved. It's the best thing you can do.
Literal money too. Donate to RPAC.
Yes. Donate to RPAC.
So Aspen, what are your thoughts on some of the legislation, maybe locally or on the national level? Yeah. Talk to us about some thoughts that you have.
So I think because I am in the multiple states, we do have transfer tax in Colorado. For investment homes. There is ADUs all over the place, especially in like Denver. So those don't necessarily scare or deter me as much. I think I said in the first episode, I am always going to be pro individual person. I'm much more concerned with these hedge funds like BlackRock and Invitation owning 80,000, 100,000 homes. And we're not really seeing that here, but I think it's only a matter of time, frankly. So I've been following more on the national level, the bills for like the Hedge Fund Control Act. I do have it written down here. I don't remember the exact name. Stop Wall Street Landlords Act and the End Hedge Funds Control of American Homes. I like I said, we're not seeing it here. But if one of these companies came in and was offering cash for homes with no contingencies, the individual homeowner is already having a hard time competing, especially first-time home buyers. I'm very concerned. Now, I've read through these bills, and I will say I don't necessarily agree with everything that's in them, especially the hedge fund control. It limits the individual person as well to 50 homes. You have to sell the remainder in 10 years. But I'm not concerned with somebody owning 50 homes. I'm not concerned with someone owning 500 homes. I'm concerned with these corporations just absolutely wiping out individual home ownership within a generation or two. That's what I'm concerned about.
I think that's a great point. And to your point, we haven't directly seen that here, but we've seen the byproduct of it. So all of us over the last couple of years have worked with people that are moving here from Phoenix or California or Texas, and they say, hey, I'm paying cash. And we're like, oh, cool. Are you selling your home out there? Yeah, I'm selling my home. They're buying cash. I'm paying cash. And after a few more questions, you can find out pretty quickly, like, where's all this liquidity coming from where they're paying $1.5 million? People are just paying cash for properties out on the coastlines. And those people are cashing in and moving here. So we're kind of we're the second step of the product that's happening. And I want to share a couple things with you because we've seen this, especially the last couple of years. Zillow got burnt on this a bit back in the day, but what they would do is they would go into a market like Phoenix and they would buy cash $300,000. And I had one of these buyers. They said, Zillow's buying my home. It's closed in 7 days, no appraisal, $300,000. And I'm like, wow. Well, I didn't realize Zillow was that far in the game. $300,000. They'd buy 30 homes in a neighborhood for $300,000 cash, no inspections, right? Take it as is. On the 31st home, guess what they would do? They would pay $350,000. Right. And so now all of a sudden, all those assets that they paid $300,000 bumped up in value because you have a new comp at $350,000. So those are the games that these hedge funds play. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, these big companies. In fact, I have a good friend, Joe, who's out. Joe, if you're listening, just a disclaimer, Joe is a great guy. He's fantastic. And he's worked for BlackRock for many years. They live in San Francisco. And about a year and a half ago, I turned to Joe and I said, Joe, did BlackRock get into real estate? And he kind of looked over at me and I said, residential real estate, not commercial, residential. And he goes, we did. And he left it at that. So I think you're right. I think over the next few years, we're going to see that because that affects the affordability for the first-time home buyer.
Yeah. They started buying up after the last recession in 2008 at just an astronomical level. It's pretty crazy whenever you actually look into who owns homes, especially in places like Phoenix and Houston. It's pretty surprising.
It's scary, actually. Isn't it?
It is. It really is, especially when we live in a relatively affordable area compared to the rest of the country. What's to say that's not going to, especially when we have bordering places like Santa Fe, Durango, we're pretty close to places like Phoenix that are pretty high priced. So I'm watching it pretty closely.
And there's another thing I want to tee in on that. Foreign countries that come here with ill intent. They're printing money. They're sending people under the guise of businessmen or women to come into America and buy land. We saw this years ago in New Mexico. We hosted an event, and it was for foreign business owners to come in. Now, if you're immigrating to New Mexico or the United States, more power to you. You become a citizen, you buy land, the
American dream.
The American dream. I'm all for that. But when you come in with ill intentions, that's a different ballgame. And what we saw was a specific country that had businessmen and women that showed up to this convention. 90% of them were from this particular country. And they spread out over New Mexico and bought and bought and bought. Now what you're seeing in the news, this was 6 years ago. And I raised the red flag at that time. What you're seeing now is, there's a foreign country that owns land next to an Air Force base. They own a significant amount of our agricultural land. They bought manufacturing warehouses that are part of our supply chain. So I think as Americans, we need to be aware of these things happening. It has nothing to do with someone immigrating here and buying land and fulfilling the American dream. That's what our country was founded on. But there are foreign operators out there that have ill intentions. Shannon, talk to us a little bit about the slippery slope of legislation. Someone says, hey, it's just a transfer tax for above $1 million. If you own a property above $1 million, what's the big deal if they hit you with a 0.5% tax? Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
Well, I think you should care about everyone's rights, whether it pertains to you or not, because That's just a matter of time before it will move over to you. But I think the problem with opening the door there is like we talked about before. First of all, it's $1 million, and in a couple of years we've all gotten used to that. We've swallowed that. We're taking it. We might hold our nose, but we've accepted it and we're doing it. And then they decide it's going to be $750, and then they decide it's going to be $5. Well, just look in the last couple of years. Probably 10 years ago, we didn't sell a lot of houses in San Juan County that were over $500,000, and now that's a lot of the houses in San Juan County.
That's changed.
Yeah.
Right?
So you think it's not a big deal, but that's going to be you pretty soon, because that gap is going to close. We're going to keep the prices of those houses are going to keep going up, and the price of where they've set it is going to keep going down. And so, you should always care about when they're taking rights away from somebody else, because they're coming for you too.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that that's happening, you probably just aren't paying enough attention.
Yeah. And precedence is set. Once that door creaks open, right? Once it creaks open, then it can be opened to whatever degree, because the precedents have been set. So
because right now it's just properties over $1 million. But like you were saying, in Colorado, what did you say it was on?
It's for investment properties.
Yep.
But there are exceptions. So like if it's like a second home, or if you live in Colorado, if you work in Colorado, you don't have to pay those. It's only for people outside of Colorado that are buying and selling in Colorado. So if you live there, it's not. But that's why I said I'm not as concerned.
But how long do you think it's going to be? Maybe 10 years before?
I'm not as involved in the Colorado side.
It's going to be everybody paying that tax.
And that's the slippery slope, right?
That's how it starts. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just a luxury tax almost, right?
Yeah.
It's your second.
And you don't care because those people have money anyway.
Yeah. They've got 2 or 3 homes, and they've got one up in Vail, and they've got one down here in Durango, and they live in Miami, whatever it is. So those people can take that tax, right? But how long is it before they go, well, it's not, if it's not your second home, then maybe we just move it to a primary residence at a certain price point, $1 million, $1.5 million above, whatever. And then slowly it starts creeping down. Over time, that's the danger of the legislation, in my opinion, as well. Paul, you got more thoughts on that?
You're talking about the slippery slope. We just went through during the pandemic in New Mexico. We had eviction moratoriums, and we're still seeing in the investment side of things, we're still seeing the ramifications for that, the unintended consequences of doing that. We're fighting legislation now in that Owner-Resident Relation Act. I think that's what it's called. We're trying to put things in there that say, I know everybody wants to fight for tenants' rights, but to get a little bit of landlord rights in there, it's very tilted towards the tenants. But when this moratorium hit, we had people that weren't paying rents for over a year.
Yeah.
The owners of those properties can't afford to do that. What was that called that everybody took?
Oh, yeah, the stipend?
No, not the stipend, but the furlough.
Forbearance.
Yeah,
forbearance.
Forbearance. That's
so
right.
Take a forbearance. So a landlord could take a forbearance, but after a while, it still needs to come. And they kind of waived all of that rent that was due to them. So we're trying to figure out a way that can't happen again.
Yeah.
And we also realize that in a health emergency, a lot of our rights get taken away anyway. So on the real estate side, we have to figure out how to make sure that everybody's protected, whether you're a tenant, a landlord, investor, anybody that has skin in the game has protection.
Yeah.
And that's what we're fighting in Santa Fe.
And tenants obviously have rights, right? You can't just show up as a landlord and knock on their door without any notice and walk in and say, I'm here.
But these days, it seems like they've become so focused on tenant rights that tenants almost have more rights to your property than you do as a homeowner in some situations, which can be really frustrating. I have investment properties because I want to, make money off of them. I want them to be there for an income. And they don't always have an income. I mean, sometimes, you lose a little bit of money or you break even, but over the long run, you want to make money on it. That was one of the problems I had during COVID, is I've got a tenant in there that's not going to pay rent. Well, what can I do about it?
Yeah. You still have a mortgage.
So the government was very quick to look out for her rights and make sure that, I didn't throw a family out on the streets when we were in the middle of a pandemic, but they didn't realize that, but my family is not only not making the positive income that we used to, we're now coming out of pocket over $1,000 a month to carry that property for someone else's family.
Yeah.
And, at the end of it, sure, I have the right to get it back at the end of it. But at the end of it, what happens? They move on and I've got 2 years.
Yeah, and you're lucky that you had the money to.
We're fortunate enough we could carry a second household, but we should not have to because the government decided that their rights were more important than ours. So yes, it's very important. I think people don't realize that is one of the things we do with RPAC is, that might be good intentions, but when you're protecting someone, sometimes you're putting somebody else in a bad position.
Yes, and
they don't always see that when they're writing that legislation.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we want to assume that the spirit of legislation is in the spirit is there to take care of the people that are involved, right? But that's not always the case. You have unintended consequences, and you have situations where people in VRBO, Aspen, you own a VRBO, and people move into your property and they become squatters. And then you have to go through this whole process to get them out, which is insane to me because of the guys that, they rented the property under 2 nights or whatever. We've had instances up in Colorado where people have gone on vacation for, a month and have come back and there are people living in their home and it has taken them a year to get those people evicted out of their property, which is incredible to me.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on those types of things?
I think I'm a little bit different opinionated than most people, maybe even in this room when it comes to it. I'm very pro tenant rights. I think this word slumlord didn't come from nothing.
Sure.
I really try and give people the benefit of the doubt and be a good landlord. And I take it as a big responsibility. And I think a lot of people will, especially being in this industry, you see people that don't have heat and they don't have safe electricity. And that is your job to get these. So I really am a big proponent of tenant rights. However, I don't think you should be able to, I moved out at a very young age. I was 16 when I moved out. I had roommates. You have to figure out a way to pay your bills. I think that's just something a responsible adult needs to do. So I do agree that you shouldn't just be able to live somewhere without paying. That's not how life works. Ultimately it's a business, not a charity. But squatters' rights never really made sense to me. I don't understand how that.
I was just going to say, doesn't it feel excessive to you?
Place.
So I was going to preface that by saying all of those things to say that's not someone who is trying. I feel like a lot of tenants are trying their hardest. And homeownership is not for everybody.
Sure.
I don't understand the squatters' rights, and that's always kind of confused me personally.
Yeah. Well, and that's again, it's been morphed from the spirit of the legislation that tries to take care of tenants, because you're absolutely right. I mean, tenants, some tenants will just never be owners, right? They just it's not in their DNA to want to take that next step, and that's totally fine. But in the spirit of taking care of their rights, it had morphed into, hey, I can jump into a property and squat, and it's going to take you a year to get me out of here. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to the next thing that benefits me. So pretty slippery slope. Yeah. We need to wrap up on time here. Any final thoughts, Melissa, you want to share on participation or legislation, or what should be on buyer and sellers' radars? Know
your rights. Just be involved. Read the paper. Paper exists anymore, I don't know, but read the articles.
Read the articles, yeah.
Do what you need to do. I know, right?
Yeah, the paper.
H myself.
We don't want to do that.
Every morning. But no, you to be an informed buyer or a seller is to be a smart and a successful buyer and seller. You have to know.
I agree with you. Okay, speed round, final thoughts. And Melissa, since you kicked us off, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
What's the most dangerous legislation that could pass and harm homeowners? Is it a transfer tax? Is it a...
I think for somebody who has an investment, probably like what's it called? Rent control.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most harmful to investors. For an owner occupant, if we get rid of tax incentives, some people rely on some of that stuff. So that's what I would go with that. Owner occupant incentives, investors, rent control.
Yep. Great answer. Aspen?
It's really hard to say. There's so many things that, like you said, there's so many things added into these bills. There's not a lot of single issue bills. It makes it really hard to say what's the most dangerous. I would say probably anything that allows government to take eminent domain of your property. I think I'm not seeing that, but I would say as far as most dangerous, that's what I would consider overreach.
Eminent domain.
Yes.
Interesting. Shannon?
I agree. I don't think it's down to one topic. I think all of it can be dangerous. It's little tiny bites that they just take until you look over a 10, 20 year period and realize how much things have changed.
Yeah.
So I think all of them can be dangerous to anyone, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, whether you're a renter, whether you're a homeowner, everything that they pass has consequence. I think that's just why it's so important for us to stay involved as realtors, to be watching those things. And the people writing the legislation, they're not always the ones with the on the ground experience that can understand what's that going to mean? What's going to happen when you pass that? They just kind of have some starry eyes when they pass it.
Yep. Understood. Paul, final thoughts there.
So the two that we're actually watching this year are rent control. And the other one is people with short-term rentals, VRBO, Airbnbs, even a little bit longer rentals. They're trying to change how they're taxed. So they're not taxed as they'd be taxed as more like a hotel or something like that. And that's going to be very detrimental to those properties.
I agree. And my final thoughts on that is you're removing tax benefits of owning property. You're going to erode the fabric that is the backbone of America. If you get rid of the 1031 exchange component, you get rid of the depreciation of the asset, you get rid of writing off the interest, right? Those things are always under attack. So just know there's a silent war out there with legislation. The realtors, specifically in this room, are on the front lines, and we are fighting for your rights every day. So if you're working with a realtor, whether it's us or another, thank them for being a participant with the RPAC, because it's very important. Yes. On to my favorite part of the podcast, the Lyons Pride. We are the Lyons Group, and we have a lot of pride in what we do in this community. We like to highlight others that do great things in this community as well. Paul Berry, it is your turn to have someone join the Pride.
No, so List for Gifts is something that we started up. It benefits the Boys and Girls Club, my gym, the lift station, along with the owners who are the guys at M&R Plumbing. They started up a kind of an exhibition, lifting exhibition. There's the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. They bring a bunch of people in. They get sponsors. The outcome of this event is to give hoodies to people the kids at the Boys and Girls Club. They've raised, I think, anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000 for the 3 years that they've done it. They've been able to give out, I think last year I should have called and got the number, but it's like a lot of hoodies, like 600 hoodies.
Yes.
And the kids love them. They wear them all winter long. So it's a great benefit for the Boys and Girls Club. And
well, I love that. And I remember seeing that event last year, and it was fantastic. So Lift for Gifts, right? So I want to say for that event, what a fantastic event for this community. And we see you, we see what you're doing in the community. For all those that are involved with a Lift for Gifts for those kids, thank you, and welcome to the Lyons Pride. We love that.
Great work.
On a final note, if you like this episode, feel free to subscribe to our channel, like and comment it. If you want to see us talk about a specific topic, throw it out there. We love that. We love to hear from our viewers. You can also go to sjcbroker.com and contact any one of us. We would all love to work with you, either residential or commercial capacity. You can request a free buyer or seller home guide. Those guides are fantastic, and request it through one of us. We'll send it to you for free. And it's a fantastic tool. We have a whole bunch of other tools, and we'd love to sit down with you and talk with you. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the top 3 mistakes buyers make. You do not want to miss that. So thank you for joining us today at The Den. My name is Ben Lyons, and we'll see you again.
Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.